Hey everyone, today I'm going to go over prop pally gearing in Phase 3 of Wrath Classic. Phase 3 brings us a new 5-boss raid, Trial of the Grand Crusader. Annoyingly, every single item in this raid has a different name depending on whether you're Horde or Alliance, so try not to get confused by that. First, let's talk about how tier gear works this phase, as it's a bit different than before. There are 3 eye levels of tier gear: 232, 245, and 258. The 232 gear can be bought with Emblems of Triumph, the new type of emblem in this phase. 245 tier requires both Emblems of Triumph and a Trophy of the Crusade, which drops in TOGC. You'll be getting plenty of these trophies, so the 245 won't be too difficult to get, and a trophy can be traded for a tier piece of any of the 5 slots, unlike previous tier tokens that were for specific slots. The 258 eye level tier is going to be very scarce because only a maximum of 4 regalias can drop every week. Like the trophies of the Crusade, regalias can be turned in for any of the 5 tier slots, but unlike trophies of the Crusade, the regalias are split up into class groups. Tallies are on the regalia of the Grand Conqueror token along with priests and warlocks. In Trial of the Crusader, you're given 50 attempts to kill all of the bosses on heroic difficulty. If you have all 50 attempts remaining when you kill the final boss, Anub, you'll get 1 eye level 272 cloak. With 45 plus attempts remaining, you'll get 2 extra regalias, in addition to the 2 you get by default, for 4 total for the week. Our main competitors for tier pieces are Affliction Locks, as they get an extremely good set bonus. The 2 pieces of 258 tier you should try to get are the Helm and Shoulders, since there aren't any other eye level 258 or 252 options for those slots. If you happen to get lucky on conch tokens, don't have many locks in your raid, or raid in a GDKP, the 258 tier legs and gloves are good to pick up. Our 2-piece bonus reduces the cooldowns of our taunts by 2 seconds and increases the damage of Hammer of the Righteous by 5%. This is a solid bonus, and the Helm and Shoulders are only 258 options, so this is a no-brainer pickup. Our 4-piece bonus reduces the cooldown of Divine Protection and Forbearance by 30 seconds, allowing us to wall more often. This bonus could be useful for some fights in ICC during progression, but you can just pick up the 245 legs and gloves if you don't end up with the 258s. Let's go over weapons. Unfortunately, you're probably not going to get a weapon upgrade this phase. There are 2 slow eye level 258 weapons, an axe, Hellscream Slicer for Horde, and Stormpike Cleaver for Alliance, and a mace, Cudgel of the Damned for Horde, and Remorseless for Alliance. If you raid with a non-GDKP, you aren't going to get one of these unless a bunch drops, so you'll just continue to use Caressive Insanity or Cerilus. The 258 axe is always the top choice for Horde, unless for some reason you are way over hit cap with it. With how abundant expertise is this phase, it's difficult to not go over hard cap with the human and dwarf mace expertise ratios when you're using Glyph of Seal of Vengeance, but the 258 mace will be slightly better than the axe if you can make full use of the racial expertise. There's also a tanky 258 fast weapon, Orgrim's Deflector for Horde, and Silverwing Defender for Alliance, that you'll want to have ready for ICC progression when we need to go a little bit beefier. These swords aren't going to be used at all in Phase 3, since the survivability requirements in TOGC are low, and Caressive Insanity is about 240 more DPS in an aggressive set depending on the fight time. Next, let's look at the Emblem of Triumph gear that's available. Librum of Valiance is a new Librum you can get for 25 emblems. Strength is a prop ally's best offensive stat by far after hit cap and expertise soft cap, and this Librum gives tons of it. It has a 70% proc chance on an 8-second cooldown for an uptime of about 96%. Librum of the Sacred Shield is still useful if you have any concerns about your survivability, or if you're in a cleave situation and using Seal of Command over Seal of Vengeance. There are 2 simple macros you can use to make this easy. The first one /cast Seal of Vengeance /equip Librum of Valiance, and the second one /cast Seal of Command /equip Librum of the Sacred Shield. This way you always have the correct Librum on regardless of which seal you're using without even having to think about it. Librum of Defiance is another new Librum from Emblems that gives your Hammer of the Righteous an 80% chance to proc a 200 dodge rating buff for 18 seconds. This has a 9-second cooldown, so this also has an uptime of about 96%. This isn't likely to be used much in Phase 3, but it will be good to have going into ICC. In case you don't know, there's a raid-wide minus 20% dodge debuff in ICC, similar to what we saw in Sunwell. So prop allies will no longer have full combat table coverage unless both Redoubt and Holy Shield are up. This will make block value a little bit less appealing since it is no longer guaranteed damage reduction, and make avoidance a little bit more appealing since it will push normal hits off the attack table instead of just blocked hits. Plus, those normal hits will be doing a lot more damage. Glyph of Indomitability is another interesting item for 50 emblems. This trinket has a whopping 1792 armor, which is the equivalent of about 160 stam versus physical attacks for phase 3 geared pallies. If you have been unlucky in Ulduar and don't have both of the stam trinkets from there, this is a good trinket to pick up. This trinket is also great for Heroic Anub'arak because higher HP actually causes you to take more damage and heal Anub'arak for more due to his Leeching Swarm ability that does 30% of your current HP every second. By switching from stam to armor on one of your trinket slots, you'll gain a little bit of survivability and do less healing to Anub'arak at the same time. There's also a solid new damage/threat trinket, Mark of Supremacy. If you can use all of the hit, this should outperform other options, but sum it with your specific gear and kill times to be sure. Clutch of Fortification is a decent new tanky ring for 35 emblems. There are several better rings coming out this phase, so this one is likely something you'd only pick up on a fresh character, or if you've gotten unlucky on other rings. Headplate of the Honor Bound is a new helm for 75 emblems. There's tons of expertise on gear this phase, so it's unlikely you'll be able to use this helm without going way over expertise hardcap, and the 245 tier helm is generally better and costs the same amount of emblems. Shoulder guards of the Enduring Order are 45 emblems, but the tier are generally better. So what should you prioritize first for spending your emblems? It really depends on your gear, guild, and goals. If you're having any survivability issues on Heroic Anub'arak or don't have both Ulduar Stam trinkets, I'd prioritize the Glyph of Indomitability to save your guild some wipes so you can get a better tribute chest. Otherwise, I'd get Libram of Valiance first, as it will be used a ton the rest of the expansion. As for tier and other pieces, pick them up as needed for slots you have lower eye level pieces in, or slots you know you aren't prioed for. You can get great eye level 258 legs and chests as drops in 25, so I would hold off on those slots. There's also a good chance you have Handguards of Revitalization already from Freya and Ulduar, so that's a lower priority slot to replace. Epic gems are also coming out this phase. You can now put epic gems in all of your gear instead of just one storm jewel. You also get far more options than storm jewels offered. There are epic versions of all of the old blue quality gems. These gems can be bought for 20 emblems of heroism for red, blues, and yellows, or 10 emblems of heroism for orange, green, and purple. You can also get them from prospecting, transmuting, and honor. These gems will release on Tuesday the week TOGC goes live, while the raid releases on Thursday, so you'll have plenty of time to put new gems in all of your gear before your first TOGC raid. The last thing to talk about before we get into sets is Sidereal Essence. This is a new currency dropped from the final boss of the new H++ dungeons, and it can be traded in for hard mode Ulduar 10-man gear. H++ is just a little bit tuned up but way more fun version of H+. If you're like me and still missing a couple pieces from Ulduar 10, or you're gearing a new prop alley, you'll want to spend some time in H++ farming to pick up any pieces you need. Now let's look at some sets. The first sets I'm going to show you are for week 1 of Trial of the Crusader for specific bosses. You don't need to wear these specific sets, they're just to give you an idea of the type of gear you should wear for each fight. First up is the Heroic Northern Beast set. This fight has 3 phases where you fight different bosses in each phase. The first phase boss, Gormok the Impaler, gets a stacking damage buff as the phase goes on and will stack a bleed effect on the tank. It does quite a bit of damage once stacks of both the damage and bleed debuff get high. Tank damage is pretty low in the second phase of the fight against the worm bosses. In the final phase, I saw it can do quite a bit of burst between his melee attack and Ferocious Bud ability. I saw many AD procs on PTR. I recommend going for a pretty tanky setup like this until you're comfortable with the fight and when to use defensives. The next set is what I used for Heroic Jarraxus, Faction Champs, and Twin Valks on PTR. Wearing this set, I felt like I had a 0% chance of dying on any of these fights, so you can really just wear whatever you want for these. Jarraxus in particular, I'm expecting to see people wear some crazy critical sets, similar to what people did for Rage Winterchill and Hyjal. Next is a Heroic Anub'arak ad tank set. Unfortunately, Blizzard hates fun, so the one cool, unique set we were going to get to use this expansion was nerfed. I'm talking, of course, about the block set. Blizzard changed the order damage was calculated from mitigation, block value, debuffs, to mitigation, debuffs, block value. So the block value set no longer works. If the incoming attack was 3500 before and you had 3500 block value, you'd reduce the damage to 0 before it hit the 225% increase from the debuff. So the damage taken would remain 0. With the change, the damage is amplified before it gets to the block value, so you're still taking quite a bit of damage. The adds can still be solo tanked with good cleave, stuns, and kiting. I personally don't have experience with this method, so I'm not certain how I would gear for that, and will instead just show you my gear for the 2 add tank method. When you have 2 add tanks, the damage taken before a Nubarak reaches 30% is really low, and isn't too scary past 30% either. Leeching Swarm is the main source of damage you'll be taking, and does 30% of your current HP every second as nature damage, and heals a noob for 230% of the damage dealt. This makes HP a double-edged sword on this fight. You need enough HP to survive burst, but higher HP will also increase your damage taken and healing done from Leeching Swarm. We can reduce this damage and healing quite a bit by using Arcanum of Toxic Warding for plus 25 NR to Helm, Superior Nature Resistance for plus 20 NR to Cloak, and use a Lesser Flask of Resistance. With those 3 things and Nature Resist Totem or Aspect of the Wild, you'll be sitting at 225 Nature Resist. If you happen to be a Leatherworker, you should use the Nature Resist Bracer enchant too. Block value gear is great as an add tank because the incoming hits are quite small, so block value will reduce incoming damage by a significant percent. You'll also want at least 6% spell hit so that you can reliably interrupt Shadow Strike with Holy Wrath. Once you're at a point where you can survive without issue, which is quite easy to get to, you should go for 24 expertise, which is the expertise cap for mobs 2 levels higher than you, and 7% physical hit, the hit cap for mobs 2 levels higher than you. This fight is an ideal situation for prop allies to do a lot of damage, as there are 5 undead targets to cleave, and you're taking quite a few attacks to proc both Reckoning and Parry Haste. Don't take risks that are going to jeopardize Bear Tribute chests, but there is definitely some room to optimize your damage. The last prog set we'll look at is for Heroic and Nubarak main tanking. This is close to what I used on the PTR. The main burst that can potentially kill you is melee into freezing slash into melee, while also taking leeching swarm damage. The freezing slash also stuns you, so you can't avoid or block during that time. I have quite a bit of stam in this set to survive the burst, despite the negative effect of leeching swarm on stam. If your guild is going to get through phase 3 quickly, and you'll have plenty of defensives for every freezing slash, you could probably run with lower stam. Now let's look at some sets with the new gear from phase 3. For each of these sets, I'll have an easier to get version of the BIS and a harder to get one. The first set is the BIS Aggressive set, which is what I'm planning to wear for the majority of TOGC and Ulduar bosses in phase 3. I already wear something similar to this for most of Ulduar in phase 2, and it's only going to get easier to wear sets like this as damage and healing increase in phase 3. Whether this type of set is right for you is going to depend on your guild. This is not a set you should use in a speedrunning guild or a guild with bad healers. This set has almost 8k attack power raid buffed, expertise hard cap with SOV, and is just shy of hit cap, but you can choose to overcap hit with a gem swap if you wish. Aggressive Insanity sims identical to Sidereal for single target, but Chris will do more cleave damage and proc PPM effects slightly more often. So Chris is still the winner this phase, and you can now get it by just running H++. If you're not interested in min-maxing, Sidereal is still a fantastic weapon to use. There's a ridiculous amount of expertise available this phase, so Dwarf and Human Pallies are likely just gonna be over expertise cap most of the time when using Sidereal or Caress. With so much expertise, you can potentially swap out your Glyph of Seal of Vengeance too. The next set is the Super BIS version of the Aggressive set. This adds in items that very few prop allies will have access to, such as a 258 weapon, Death's Choice, and Ret Pally Tear Gloves. This is for people who run GDKPs and have more gold than they know what to do with, or who get absurdly lucky with drops. Up next is the BIS Balanced set. This set is significantly tankier than the Aggressive set and can handle anything next phase. This is more of a set I'd use in pugs where the healing quality might be lower. If you don't want to be quite as tanky, but also don't want to go as far as the aggressive set goes, you can just adjust the gems on this set and calibrate the set to specifically what you need. If for some reason you actually do need to go tankier than this set, you can just throw on double stam trinkets. A lot of the items are the same between this set and the aggressive set. The key differences are that we drop the 245 DPS gloves, 252 DPS belt, and 252 DPS ring to pick up some higher eye level tank statted options. Since we're losing hit in all three of those slots, we can pick that back up with Mark of Supremacy, the new emblem trinket. By picking up avoidance in our gloves, belt, and ring, it also gets us back to full combat table coverage with Holy Shield, so that the worst outcome of an attack is a block. Since most of the items are the same between both the aggressive and balanced sets, it'll be up to you how you want to gem them and enchant them for your specific goals. Pick up doubles of pieces when you're able to, and then you can have one with aggressive gems and enchants and one with tanky gems and enchants. The Super BIS version of this set picks up tear gloves and legs for 4-piece, a 258 weapon, and Death's Choice. Again, these aren't things most people are likely to get, but if you run in a GDKP or get ridiculously lucky, you can aim for these. The last sets we'll look at are the tanky sets. The BIS Tanky set is far tankier than anything you'll need for Phase 3 outside of the worst trade chat pug imaginable. But this is gear we want to have ready to go for when ICC comes around in Phase 4, where survivability will be significantly more important than it is now. You'll probably want to have the eye level 245 tier gloves and legs available for 4-piece, as it could be good early in ICC for some fights, but outside of those fights, you'll probably just use the non-tier 252 gloves and 258 legs. The Signified Ring of Binding is a great ring from Onyxia that may be used on some fights like Heroic Sendragosa and Heroic Lich King, so try to pick that up. I've got the 258 tank weapon in this set too, just for some extra survivability. As we talked about before, Libram of Defiance is going to be solid for harder hitting stuff in ICC, since we won't have full combat table coverage with Holy Shield due to Chill of the Throne. This Libram just helps us push more normal hits off the attack table. The Super BIS version of this set is pretty much the same, just adding in the 258 tier gloves and legs that you may not get due to token scarcity. That should cover pretty much everything you need to know about Phase 3 gearing for prop guys. If you want, you can check out my stream at twitch.tv/subtlefw. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.